Today I was interviewed by a media house, and I was asked to give my take as it concerns the current election of Donald Trump in the US and what ordinarily that holds for the world and what that holds for Europe, since at the moment I am in Europe, and I said a couple of things here and there. Completely, you don't really get to know all the questions they're going to ask you. You don't really know how far-reaching it can go and how not so. If it ends up getting published, good and fine. If not, still also fine. But I just wanted to take out this time to say a few things as it concerns what I observed from the questions being asked or the questions thrown at me. It boils down to interest. It has always been interest. It has always been interest, my people. Interest for a particular region, interest for a particular group of people, and how their life ordinarily is meant to function and flourish going forward. It is the whole idea of politics. If you go down to Plato's politics, if you go down to the philosophies that I've seen to the emergence of different kinds of government, it has always been politics. It has always been politics. It has always been a revolution. It has always been the people saying, we are tired of these people. We want another person, be it consciously or not, whether they get to know these things or not, whether they are conscious of their decisions or not, whether they are fully informed or not. People have always worked for their interests. People have always worked for what they presume to be the goods that can come out of a particular people. People don't just do altruistic attitudes for altruistic attitudes alone. People don't just become hedonistic for hedonistic purposes and pleasures alone. People are searching for good. People are searching for the good in their life. People are searching for the good that can come out of decisions they get to take. Whether they succeed or not, it's a bone of contention. It's a conversation for another day. And in the course of this conversation, stuffs as it concerns the Ukrainian war came up. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia came up, and what I could say is also what Trump ordinarily at some point had said. People are dying. People are fucking dying in the 21st century, and we are playing politics and we are playing policies with it. It might look a bit cynical for you to listen to me just get to say that and give that as almost my only answer. That is not only my answer, but it still goes down to say that in the 21st century, we sit down, we just think everything is fine, we just think everything is okay, we just think everybody is fine, and we can just comfortably live life the way we live life, and then just do what we want to do because it doesn't affect us, and allow people to get to die. And it matters that we're not even thinking about this thing. It is shocking sometimes that we don't really understand the gravity and the consequences of the many wars we fight now. Because the wars we fight now going into the future up until the next century are things ordinarily that would determine what the future would get to look like. In as much as history will be taught, in as much as people will get to remember history, in as much as people will get to do all of these things, they will definitely remember the grievances done to them or meted to them by a group of people, and then even those who genuinely lost a war. Because I don't believe people really lose a war, but let's assume those who genuinely get to lose a war. What would they do? They will get to come back. A possible retaliation. We've seen this in the Middle East and in the different places that people have always gone back to their history, dug up old stuff, old grievances, old wound, get to peel it off, and then get to rub their hands around it and say, we are going to fight, we are going to war, we are going for a battle, we are going to have our victory, we are going to have our stance known to these people, and we are going to tell them that we don't forget. And what becomes of that? History begins to repeat itself again because we've never learned from history. History continues to repeat itself because we continue to fight and we continue to manipulate people. And a whole lot of persons might have different opinion as it concerns why Trump won, but the answers are simple. If you've been following the likes of PBD podcast, if you've listened to Dominic Tachinsky talk and his campaigns in the US, if you've listened to Ben Shapiro, if you've listened to Candace Owens, if you've listened to a whole lot of persons ordinarily putting out there, if you've looked at the different ways he ordinarily championed his comeback, you get to see that man has really done himself well. In 2016 was Twitter, whether he was tweeting stupid stuff or not, that was how he got the people's attention. In 2024, he went down to the podcast, spoke to people, and he spoke to different podcast hosts, people you would not ordinarily get to think that he would by any means or by any standard get to talk to and get to ordinarily look at their lives and look at what comes out of such situation. People ordinarily you would not expect a presidential candidate ordinarily to go meet. He's had strong ties with Ben Shapiro. He went to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said, I'm not going to do Trump. I'm not going to give him that chance.
I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him.
But what happened? Months later, he granted him the chance. He went to PBD podcast and then he granted an interview down there. He's had different persons interview him and he has spoken to different persons. He has spoken to a whole lot of persons. Most persons never believed he would ordinarily get to speak to. But then, with all of this going up and down, with all of this coming to place, a place like Europe continues to wonder, is he going to pull out of NATO? What is he going to make of the EU? Because he has had different opinions and he has had different stance as it concerns possibility of pulling out, in as much as many persons who belong to NATO and the EU have refused to pay the measure they are ordinarily supposed to pay. And we saw that in 2018 when he almost pulled out, and it took the last minute intervention to call him out of such agreement. It's always been about agreement. It has always been about this. It has always been about this. If you look at the UK and you get to see what happens down there, you get to see the debates that went back and forth as it concerns the different parties coming to parliament to ask themselves and to hold themselves accountable for what they made as it concerns the president. And you see my Nigerian sister at the forefront of it, championing the charge for a possible apology or possible realignment of what ordinarily you will come to call international relations.
And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
Mr. Speaker, there will be many issues on which the Leader of the Opposition and I disagree, but there will be issues that do unite this House on national security and Ukraine, and I do look forward to working closely with her on that, and I will provide her with the information that she needs to discharge her duties. That's the right thing for the country, and it's far more important than party politics. And the Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Be that as it may, it remains the fact that a thing like the Russian invasion and possible annexation of parts of Ukraine, or if not all, would be a thing for serious conversation. And he has said it before. He is going to start the possible plan for that before he assumes office, and probably after he assumes office, things ordinarily will come to have a little change of how things ordinarily get to flow. I asked a person, when I was asked, do I think it's going to be like an immediate response in the next 24 hours to stop the war? I'm like, it is not possible. You know, journalists get to ask outrageous questions. I maintained the fact that it is not going to be an immediate solution. He cannot just ordinarily want to do this. He's not the president of Russia. He's not the president of Ukraine. So he has to come with these people. We have to sit down They have to sit down together and probably iron out issues for themselves. I brought up the whole idea of the legend of the round table in the legends of King Arthur, and the possibility of knights sitting down around and then having a conversation for the good of the world is a thing we ordinarily should be looking up for. It's a thing we ordinarily should be hoping for, because these are the ways ordinarily we get to look at things. Otherwise, what should one be looking up for in daring times like this? The wars that are happening at the moment, and with the powers a place like the United States ordinarily have and the influence it gets to wield, you ordinarily will expect them to be championing a whole lot of things going forward. Sudan is currently having crisis. They have been fighting for the longest. Ethiopia has not known peace. Nigeria is currently facing terrorism. Syria is currently having its own war. Yemen, Yugoslavia, different places have been having different crises. And we just sit down and we make policies and we try to change things and we try to navigate, and then we see how things get to go. It doesn't make sense. There's conflict currently going on in Georgia. People have not known peace. The elections have been highly rigged, but then we've been told they have not. They have been free and fair. Moscow is still trying to exert its power on TBDC and different parts of Georgia, if not the whole entire country. Armenia, Azerbaijan, these are places that ordinarily are still having crisis. The problems have not stopped. The problems are continuing. The people are currently speaking out and then pointing out their grievances. But then what happens? Almost nothing happens. People just get to sit down and watch themselves die. The Middle East is currently having its own problem. There are issues down that particular route. Hezbollah, Iran, Lebanon, Israel, Gaza, you name it. The whole lot of problems going on in our world today, and we need to look at things squarely. We need to look at things from the perspective we ordinarily ought to look at them, because, come on, we cannot continue a world like this. We cannot continue a world aiming towards chaos. And people have just been unnecessarily agitated sometimes. You know, he has been called all sorts of names. He has been called a fascist. He has been called an extremist. He has been called a fanatic. He has been called a Nazi. He has been equated to Hitler. He has been equated to a whole lot of things. But what stands out here, as it concerns the US elections, the candidates presented to us are not saints. They were not saints. People had to look at things ordinarily that ordinarily would benefit them. And so people went down with things they felt aligned with their way of living. And Americans, as we know it, nothing really have changed about them. If you want to think so much have changed about America, come on, land of the free, land of the brave. When they were writing their amendments and their constitutions in the first place, slavery was still a thing invoked. Even after it was revoked, and even when it was seen as an abomination, as a crime, a whole lot of persons went about owning slaves, and then there were lots of problems they've gotten down there. Don't be deceived that America is this unified country in terms of ideologies and in terms of different things. What do they debate about in the US? Abortion, killing of babies, killing of innocent children, terminating lives that ordinarily were supposed to see the light of day for whatsoever reason they get to present, because the reasons they get to present are sometimes, if not most times, different from ordinarily the circumstances that get to lead to abortion. Because I think the number one issue that gets to cause abortion in our world on a large scale to the level we've come to have it is the idea of irresponsibility and the whole idea of eugenics. People get to practice eugenics, people get to practice selective cleansing, people get to pick and choose what they want, people get to pick if they want a boy, if they want a girl, as though that's ordinarily what life should be, how life should be looked at. But then nobody gets to complain, nobody gets to talk. People just keep quiet, and then they just like, abortion is all fine, it's a woman's right. Come on, who says abortion is completely a right belonging only to the woman? What about the baby? If we are saying that is life, what about the baby? It is important that such a person ordinarily be given a chance to live. Look at me, I was raised by my mom. What would have happened if the circumstances around which she was pregnant was not taken into consideration, and she ordinarily just decided to do ordinarily what many people would ordinarily do? I wouldn't have been sitting down here talking to you. It's not as though my life is all that important, but my life is very important because my life is important. I don't care if other persons get to think whether it's important or not. I'm just saying for myself, my lived experience, my life now going forward, I've seen significant changes and will continue to see significant changes as I progress down here and as I also try to get across my different layers and levels of consciousness as I peel and I open the layers of my consciousness and try to understand ordinarily what to make of life and what to make of my existence down here. And the conversations about America first, it's a nationalistic campaign he ran on that. The same way he lost due to COVID in 2020, it's the same way he is running this year on a different, not necessarily a different stuff, on a nationalistic campaign. It's in and about that. It's about the border. It's about the security of Americans. It's about them getting to hold sway and hold their power and then not getting to make wrong decisions. It's about them cutting the expenses. It's about a lot of things. And those such things are the things that got to see him get to be elected president. And the fact that Kamala lies without fear, without shame. She lies blatantly, she lies openly, she just opens her mouth and it runs. She lies about even the most insignificant of things ordinarily that don't matter, that you shouldn't even lie about. You get to go down there. It was just so obvious. It was just so obvious, and it breaks me. You know, I would want to see a woman be president. But I don't want to see a woman become president because she's a woman. I want to see a woman become president because she's competent, because she knows ordinarily what to do in the face of politics, in the face of geopolitics, and what she ordinarily shouldn't be doing. I am not a moral emotivist. I am not one who is easily swayed by such arguments as it concerns appeal to emotions and all that. Present the facts before us. You were the vice president, or you are the vice president. A vice president who worked with a president that became so old and senile, and then people couldn't even get to understand what was happening with their president. And when you were asked, you said he was all fine. And then when you were asked about Biden, when you were asked about Trump, you said he's unfit, he's unhealthy, he's insane and all that. But then we know Bros Biden became so old. Bros J became so old that you won't blame me, age caught up with him, and what do we say about that? But the lies were just too much. Were you expecting people to get to vote for you in a place like the US up to the point of getting victory in an economy that ordinarily people have come to complain about a lot of things, in a situation where people are scared about the possibility of a third world war if it has not started already? Because I keep on telling people, and I believe many persons get to believe this. When Poland was invaded from both sides, nobody believed the Second World War started. But unfortunately, that was what happened. And in a few days, it's going to be celebrating her independence. And it's a testament to the fact that we ordinarily at the moment have not really come to understand what we are doing in our modern time, what we are doing, the fear we are putting in ourselves, the problems we are creating, the problems we live by, the things we ordinarily don't want to take into account, the things we ordinarily don't want to look at, the fights we fight and the wars we get to forge and the things we get to do in the name of peace. These are things we ordinarily should be looking at. These are things we should be looking at carefully going forward into whatsoever becomes geopolitics in our world today. The whole idea of America first is a thing almost every country has come in one way or the other to champion. No country has ordinarily gone out there to put the next country first. They only go there to help in relation to what they benefit and how trade gets to function between them. So if the US is supporting NATO and is strongly doing so, a commendable thing, to the level we can get to commend them about that, it also holds that if not for the influences and if not for the benefits they'll stand to gain from Europe not getting involved in wars, will get to bring. I don't think ordinarily they will be doing that. The US don't just sit down and want to help you. Why would they want to help you if there's nothing they are trading for? It's either a diplomatic relationship that ordinarily sometimes will lead to other forms of exploitation or other forms of extracting products, or they just want to wield power and then they just want to assert themselves as that morality police or keep other things in checks. And so when you see them in Africa, they are not there in Africa because they love you. They are there in Africa because of the interest they get to get out of that place. And that's not just the only thing. They are also there because they want to keep other war powers in check. They want to keep Russia in check. They want to keep Ukraine in check. That's why they want to keep they want to keep China in check. They want to keep Japan in check. They want to keep Singapore in check. They want to checkmate things and then get to see that ordinarily things get to function. And so if you are there as a young man, a young man or young woman, walking yourself up as it concerns the fact that Trump has been elected, I'm saying you should wake up to the reality of the fact that amongst the candidates presented, amongst the people we had, to a great extent, I believe Trump played the game well, and he presented facts and he presented figures. He told the American people what he ordinarily want to do. He told them what he would not do. He told them how he will lead them. He told them the things he's ordinarily going to do. He was more convincing, and in the game of debating and the game of rhetorics, most times, many persons don't ordinarily come to be convinced by what certain persons cannot say. She granted fewer interviews. She wasn't forthcoming. She wasn't standing there. Most of her interview strategies were very cringy. Today she's Indian, tomorrow she's African. Come on, take a stance and take a stance. I am African, I am Nigerian, as far as those words get to exist. As far as the consciousness that comes with aligning myself with this particular reality continues to exist. I am a Nigerian. It is not just a nominalistic reality. It's a reality in and of the fact that at the moment I am a Nigerian. I'm from Africa because that's a continent. I'm from Nigeria because that's a country. Coming back to the whole idea of the wars we get to fight, why do we have to fight so much? Why do we have to kill ourselves so much before we ordinarily come to realize that we are brothers and sisters? Why are we doing the things we are doing? Why are we being this brutish? Why are we being this sad, angry, sarcastic? Why are we being this annoying? Why are we being this confused? In the 21st century, with all the wars we fought, with all the things ordinarily we should come to know about the world, why do we continue to fight? The answer is simple. Many persons believe if we don't fight, others are going to get to fight. If we don't get to fight, others will fight. If we don't do it, the next person will do it. So why not do it and then maintain power? It just goes a long way to show you how brutish and how stupid and how annoying a group of people like we as humans, Homo sapiens, ordinarily have come to be. We have not ordinarily come to understand that lives down here can be much more peaceful if we come to coexist together, if we come to harness and speak up for one another. It's also one of the things I talked about in the course of this interview. I said, one person cannot do it. Trump cannot just sit down there and declare the war in Ukraine and the war in Russia over. He doesn't have the power to do that, except he wants the war to get to descend into chaos. It has to be that round table. It has to be a collective effort. It goes down to tell us that we have to be very resilient. Whether you like Trump or not, you have to give him this particular stuff. Man has been resilient. He has been so resilient. Check the first time he was going for his mugshot in 2022. Check the different conspiracy theories that have been made at his life. Check the fact that man was almost assassinated. Man was almost killed twice. Assassination attempts were launched towards his person 2 times and he escaped. And he has attributed that to God as it concerns him surviving that. He survived that narrowly. Listen to someone like Jordan Peterson and see what he said about Trump. Look at those surrounding him. Vivek, Kennedy Jr., J.D. Vance. Look at Elon Musk. Look at people that championed him. Kennedy was even in the race and said, you're going to see my name there on the ballot, but don't vote for me. Go cast your vote for Trump. Because man knows what it takes ordinarily to run an economy, to run a government. There are no perfect sides when it comes to modern day politics. Not even Plato's idea ordinarily can be replicated in our time now. But it goes a long way to get to say that things were done the way they were done for reasons ordinarily that aligns to the will and the desire of the people. As such, every elections around the world, every set of government should be made available for the people to get to decide how they want to go. I am an anti-monarchist. I don't really believe in the idea of a monarch because, come on, some persons were just born into certain situations and then they become more important than certain persons. They don't get to pay tax. They have immunity for a whole lot of things. We can do better. We can do better. Elections have come. Elections are now technically in the past. Whatever becomes of the US elections and whatever becomes of the US people in relation to the world is a thing that we ordinarily should come to admire a whole lot. But also there's a problem. The US likes interfering in a whole lot of affairs around the world, but when it comes to their own issues, almost nobody gets to have a say. It's also a wake-up call for a whole lot of persons around the world to ordinarily come to tell themselves that they should be as autonomous as possible. They should be as law-abiding and as free as ordinarily there can be. But until that is done, these war powers, so to call them, would continue to wield power over what they call developing countries, and the ways of life down here would not ordinarily be as sane as we think it can be, in as much as we have these so-called powers in place. The Security Council and the states that ordinarily have to give, that have veto power, and what gets to go down there. We can do better. We ought to do better. NATO shouldn't be so scared. Alliances should be formed. The EU shouldn't be so confused at the moment. The world ordinarily is not descending into one chaos. The world is the way the world is because many persons are just anxious and many persons just get to read and read and read and read. It is not me saying that there's no real threat or there are no real issues in the world to think about. There are, but then a whole lot of things ordinarily still has to be considered. We've not really given shots at peace. And when people get to ask me, why do you always talk about peace? Because what should I talk about? War? Have you seen anybody who really wins a war? Have you seen anybody who ordinarily wins a war? Nobody really wins a war. Nobody really wins a war. Both sides return back home with scars on their body, with trauma and with lots of things to think about. Nobody really wins a war. So if you are thinking a side ordinarily will win a war, I want to know that side, please. I've not seen a side that ordinarily gets to win a war. Nobody really wins a war. Both sides go back and then they continue to have their fights, they continue to have their problems, they continue to have their divides. Most sides never get to recover. In fact, all sides don't recover completely. Problems are endless, the problems are many. The situations remain daring. The confusions continue to escalate day in, day out. And there are almost no real-time solutions to these things than peace. So why will you want me not to talk about peace? Why will you want me to continue to talk about something that is not plausible? Why do you want me to talk about things ordinarily that don't make sense? Why? That shouldn't be the case. We should look at life critically and we should look at life squarely. We should look at life for all the good things ordinarily life can do and life can be and life should do. But what is there to say? What is there to say that at the moment we are not ready? At the moment, up until now, despite our levels of civilization and our levels of exposure and consciousness, we have still been so selfish in the ways of doing things and in the ways of living. We have still been so selfish in the ways of championing peace and championing growth. We go to the United Nations every day. We get to say things ordinarily that I, for one, would not get to understand. We get to have sanctions and we get to have patterns that get to make life so difficult and stringent for us, and we don't want to come out of that. And when we are being told the possibility of coming from out of that, we become so scared and we get so afraid, and we tell ourselves, no, we don't want peace. It is too fragile. It is too delicate a thing to have. We need arms. We need technology to continue to tell us how we can exploit other people. We need to produce things. We need to champion industrialization. We need to continue to push capitalism forward because at the moment it is the best thing we've got. We need to continue to do things the way we get to do. We need to invent new ways of slavery. We need to invent new ways of oppression. We need to give people things like minimum wage. We need to make those who ordinarily get to produce things come to produce things to the level at which they themselves cannot even afford them. We need to talk about selective wars. We need to talk about Ukraine. We need to talk about Russia. We need to forget about Azerbaijan. We need to forget about Georgia. We need to forget about Armenia. We need to just close our eyes a little bit towards Belarus, and we need to not talk about. We don't even need to talk about Syria. We don't need to talk about the high cost of living in a place like Turkey. We don't ordinarily need to talk about these things, you know. We don't need to talk about Sudan. No, why do you want to talk about Africa? You shouldn't talk about Africa. Why should you talk about Africa? No. Leave those people there. They're just so dumb, daft, and probably they are so uncivilized, and so let's allow them down there. You know, let's use them, let's exploit them, let's do what we can do with them. Let's call them all the names we can call them, and let's make them not to recognize themselves. Let's give Scott Heron a chance of getting to tell us ordinarily what we already know, and what did the poet and rapper get to say.
I was wondering about our yesterdays and digging through the rubble. And to say the least, somebody went to a hell of a lot of trouble to make sure that when we looked things up, we wouldn't fare too well, and we would come up with totally unreliable pictures of ourselves. But I've compiled what few facts I could, such as they are, to see if we could find out a little bit of something, and this is what I got so far. First, white folks discovered Africa. They claimed it fair and square. Cecil Rhodes couldn't have been robbing nobody because, hell, there wasn't nobody there. And white folks brought all the civilization because there wasn't none around. How could the folks be civilized when wasn't nobody writing nothing down? And just to prove all of their suspicions, well, didn't take too long. They found out that there were whole tribes of people in plain sight running around with no clothes on. That's right. The men, the women, the young, and the old righteous folks covered their eyes. And no time was spent considering the environment. Hell no, this just wasn't civilized. And another piece of information they had, or at least this is what we were taught, is that unlike the civilized people of Europe, these tribal units actually fought. And yes, there was some crude implements, and yes, there was primitive art, and yes, they were masters of hunting and fishing, and courtesy came from the heart. And yes, there was love and medicine, religion, intertribal communication by drum. But no paper, no pencils, and no other utensils, and hell, these folks never even heard of a gun. And this is why the colonies came, to stabilize the land, because the dark continent had copper and gold, and the discoverers had themselves a plan. They would discover all the places with promise. You didn't need no titles and deeds. Then they would appoint people to make everything legal, to sanction the trickery and greed. And back in the jungle, when the natives got restless, they would call it guerrilla attack. And they would never describe that the folks finally got wise and decided that they would fight back. And still, we are victims of word games. Semantics is always a bitch. Places once referred to as underdeveloped are now called mineral rich. And the game goes on eternally. Unity kept just beyond reach. Egypt and Libya used to be in Africa. They've now been moved to the Middle East. There are examples galore, I assure you. But if interpreting were left up to me, I'd be sure every time folks knew this version wasn't mine, which is why it is called his story.
Let's just make them that. Let's make them not to recognize their history. Let's give them the history of another group of people. Let's give them other things to think about. Let's make their life less meaningful. As much as we think these are the ways we ordinarily should go, as much as we want to exploit people, as much as we want to do business with people, as much as we want to continue to go down this particular route, we should be ready to tell ourselves that there should be peace. There should be progress in our world. The world needs peace. Whether it's Trump that is going to grant us that peace, a thing that I don't really think it's going to happen with him, or whether it is not going to happen at all, still doesn't mean that we don't need peace. We need peace. The tensions in the world are crazy. Congo is being exploited by the day, and different possibilities and different solutions ordinarily should be popping up by now. But unfortunately, we don't see that coming. We don't see that forthcoming. We see people just do things the way they do things and live their life the way they get to live their life. And we think it's all fine. We think it's all good. We think it's all okay. But it's not. What is the future we are handing over to our children? What is the thing we ordinarily can learn from the people of the US? And please don't come here and start telling me the whole idea of those who voted for Trump are less educated than you, or those who voted for Trump are not intellectuals enough. Don't come to tell me that. Man has put in the work. It still goes a long way to get to tell us that what Theodore Roosevelt ordinarily said about the man in the arena is a thing plausible. And it's even a coincidence. They are going to be spending similar times in office. Theodore Roosevelt, from being a vice president to the different situations that he found himself, the warring time and all that, and up until the time he spent in the White House and the different things he get to say, and the ways he led the people of America during the conflict that surrounded his presidency and the controversies around that period also. Trump also has been given a mandate. Is he going to listen to someone like Theodore Roosevelt, who said it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the dwarf deeds could have done them better? Indeed, the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who errs, who comes short again and again, who knows that there's no effort without error and shortcoming, who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who in the end, if he succeeds while daring greatly, and knows the triumph of high achievement. And if he fails at least while daring greatly, so that his place shall not be with those cold and timid souls who neither no success nor defeat. As such, Trump has come into the race. He has told the naysayers, he has told those who criticized him that it's possible. Resilience. He said, fight. So that even when he was shot, many persons said it was staged. How do you stage such a stuff? How do you do that? It is not possible that you stage such a stuff. It is the level of condescension that surrounded the whole idea of him almost dying, and many persons not even thinking about it, many persons not even talking about it. Twice. Not just once, twice. This is a man who almost got killed twice. For whatsoever the charges against him as it concerns his personal way of conduct and personal ways of behaving, we've not been given clear-cut answers. We've not been given clear-cut situations as it concerns ordinarily what happens. And don't allow anybody to gaslight you as it concerns to express yourself and try to get to see to it that a possibility of a new world order can be formed with you. Don't be so annoyed to the point where you don't want to express your opinion. Don't lose that friend because she or she supported Kamala Harris. Don't be so angry with that your brother because he or she supported because he supported Trump. Don't be so angry with your sister because she almost was non-partisan. But it still goes a long way to say a thing like politics is very important. A thing like politics is a thing we all should be doing. A thing like politics is a thing we all cannot avoid. A thing like politics is a thing we all need to give the necessary shot it needs to be given. The new world can be formed. There's so much uncertainties that surrounds someone like Trump as it concerns that the same way he picks up his phone and tweets on Twitter and then just gets to do things the way he gets to do them and says the type of things he gets to say are things we ordinarily should be given attention to. You see him look at his phones, you see him just do things, you just see him do things and then like this, and it's so sad that many persons ordinarily will not come to see this. Many persons will just come to think that you judge a man completely by his past. Fine. He came in from the media world and then he entered into politics and he has attempted to do that a couple of times. I think 1988, 2002, right? 2002 and 2012 before he finally made up his mind in 2016 and he won. And he lost due to COVID and the different controversies and situations that surrounded his first term. I guess he's coming, he has learned better. He's going to lead the people of America well. And he's going to lead them as much as he can do within his strength. He has a crop of people around him that I believe would get to guide him well and put him through things. Kamala had a difficult fight because she was campaigning against her own government. They've been in office for 4 years. All the things she said she would have done are the things she ordinarily should have done. All the things she wanted to implement are the things they ordinarily should have looked at during their first term in office. But they didn't do that. As such, they are granting President Trump the chance of being the 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America. How is that even possible? It's possible because a man said, put America first. Let's make America great. Put yourself first, love yourself, love your neighbor, love your life, and then let's see where we ordinarily head with this. Let's see where we ordinarily go with this. Let's see how we champion our life. Let's see how we move forward. Let's see how we function well. Let's see how we grow. Let's see how we triumph in the face of all the problems we're having. Let's do something out of the box. Let's do something different. Let's live life. Let's be happy. Let's try our best to put ourselves out there. As such, if we don't put ourselves out there, nobody puts us out there. If we don't put ourselves out there, nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. And try your very best, even in your personal life, to shoot your shot. Come at it again and again and again and again, and see the possibility of getting victory, and see the possibility of getting a change in your life, and see the possibility of coming to understand the dynamics of life and the dynamics of politics. War is one of the things people are afraid of, especially those in Europe, and rightly so. But it also goes to say that we shouldn't be looking at those who ordinarily want to win this war. Let's look at the possibility of ending the war. Is it going to end? I don't know. What about the Middle East? What about Israel? What about Iran? What about Lebanon? What about the Middle East? What about Africa? What about the different factions that are having issues? What about Asia? What about this crisis going on there? Be it East Asia, be it whatsoever. What about peace in the world? Nobody's really thinking and talking about that. With all our technological strides and the things we think we've come to be in the 21st century, what still holds is the fact that we have been fighting for the longest. We've been fighting battles we ordinarily shouldn't be fighting. We've been fighting for things we ordinarily shouldn't be fighting for. We've been looking at things from the angles we ordinarily shouldn't be looking at them. We've been fighting for things we ordinarily shouldn't be fighting for. How many years do we have in this world? 70 years, 80 years for those who are strong. And then what? All the pleasures and all the hedonistic attitudes and ways we get to look at things, and we want to see life go, and we want to see things turn out. Are those the things we ordinarily would see ourselves do going forward? Aren't we supposed to be looking at the possibility of changing things and changing ways we get to do things and ways we don't get to do things? Tell me, if you're even coming from the angle of morality and the angle of justifications between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who will you call a saint? If you support Harris, it's nothing saintly there. If you support Trump, there's nothing saintly there. So you just have to use your rationality, and you just have to look at the things you ordinarily needed to look at, and then make your choice from that particular perspective. If for you Trump is a better candidate, good and fine. If for you Harris is a better candidate, good and fine. But for those who put up arguments as it concerns the US and the elections down there, and how ordinarily things should be done, you have to give it to them. You have to give it to them to a great extent. That Trump put up a good fight. Kamala did so well also for herself. She came in very, very late. It's a thing they should have figured out a long time ago, but she came in like a substitute. She was like a side chick. She was not even like the main person they were like trying to put out there. And it's a thing also I still fault them for. They should have brought her up earlier on, but even if they had done that, the damage had already been done for 4 years. Her party didn't make things easy. Her party made life kind of difficult. And for as many people out there who are saying America is not ready for a female president, keep quiet. Keep quiet, please. For once, just keep quiet. A woman would do well as a man, but a competent woman and a competent man. Biden was a man, and the administration was like a disaster. Kamala would have been a better candidate from the start. But at least we've come to see what we've come to see. As such, the problems down here are the way they are, and we hope for peace. We hope for a new world order. We hope for things to get better. We hope for the world to grow and the world to move forward into better places and into good hands. We should do away with all the fights we're fighting. It's not necessary. The fightings are just too much. The confusions in our world are crazy. Nobody should condescend on women and talking about should a woman should a woman be in the White House? What do you mean by that? Women have been able to lead in the world. They have done different things. Germany was led by who? For how many years? Will somebody want to say Angela Merkel didn't do well? Or will somebody want to say the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Minister of Finance? Will anybody want to tell us a good lady from Barbados is not doing well in the Caribbeans? There are a lot of persons out there who can do better. If your whole argument for not voting Kamala was because she's a woman, you also still need to reevaluate the ways you get to do things. I'm speaking strictly from an idealistic standpoint with empirical data before us, and it is from that particular perspective I speak from. And I hope going forward the world comes to have peace, the world comes to have the necessary stability it needs in the 21st century. We cannot continue killing ourselves and bombing our cities and rebuilding things. It doesn't make sense. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. As such, let us do ourselves a favor. And what was that favor? Let us stand strong. Let us stand tall. Let us live large lives. Let us live in peace. Let us live for love. Let us be happy. Let us make peace and progress where we need to make these things. Let us make the world great again. Let us make friendships great again. Let us make our lives down here great again. Let us make the future great. Let us not give our children the panics they don't need. Let us be rational again. The world needs peace, and Trump alone cannot do it. In your country, what are the things and the steps you are taking to see to it that you hold your government accountable? Look at the US. They have been trying to hold themselves accountable. They have been trying. I'm not saying they are holding themselves. I've said they have been trying, or at least they have been showing us traits and signs as though they have been holding themselves accountable. Let us believe them for once. The level of transparency in the elections are things also we have to replicate in our different countries. And the levels of democracy they have not come to, it is not a perfect democracy. It has never been a perfect democracy for the US. Racism is still seen on many fronts, but it still holds that we need to advance, we need to progress, we need to forge ahead and move forward. World peace is so important. World peace is so important. And if you're a European, don't just be unnecessarily schizophrenic as it concerns the fact that someone like Trump is going to pull out of NATO. He is not the US. He has to do it in consultation with different people. And what does that also have to tell us? That it's time we put an end to the wars we get to fight. But like I also pointed out, it is not enough for one side to just want peace. One side might want peace and the other side will not want peace. One side might want progress, the other side will not want progress. And so they still become a rift down there. Both sides ordinarily should come to have peace. And how do we do that? We have to start re-engineering and restructuring the ways we've come to understand life, politics, geopolitics, living down here. When is that going to happen? Anytime soon? I don't think so. I think if you give us time, if we have time the longest down here, things can change, things can get better, progress can be made, life can be led in ways that ordinarily would see to it that things get better. But we have to first and foremost tell ourselves that at the moment, we all need to come together and then try to see how we forge a united front going forward. What does it take to be peaceful? What does it take to be loving? What does it take to be caring? What does it take to be all the good things we ordinarily want to see in the world? What does it take to be the good person? What does it take to be a sane person in our 21st century? What does it take to read history objectively and then come to understand life? What does it take to understand the sheer confusion we get to do and the sheer confusion we get to live in and we get to surround ourselves with and by? The sheer mystery that beclouds our imagination and our intellect as it concerns we ordinarily coming to figure out what we should do and what we shouldn't do in life. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a chance at peace. Give yourself a chance for progress. Give yourself a chance to grow taller, stronger, brighter on many fronts as possible. Give yourself some time to sit and reflect, my dear world. Give yourself time to think, my dear people. And who are my people? You and I, my brothers and sisters. Who are my friends? You and I. Who is the world? You and I. We are the only people that can change these things. We are the only people that can make the necessary progress we ordinarily want to make. We are the only people that would ordinarily come to champion life the way we want to champion them. Whether you want to stay on the side of Beyonce, Taylor Swift, or Elon Musk, and the different people and the different camps they've come to support, or you just want to be quiet. It goes a long way to say that Kamala could have done better, but she didn't. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it happens the way it happens. You're looking at the elections in the US and you're expecting a saint. How do you even conceive of those ideas? You watch some videos and you were thinking it is not going to happen the way it happened. Trump would have won the election. It was clear, it was obvious. It was a strong race, but the landslide would ordinarily still be there. Trump would have still won the elections because there were signs pointing towards that direction. She took a lot of things for granted. She took a lot of things for granted. Her campaign team also did. Trump has this vigor in him. He has this strength, and by the way, he has this strength in him that sometimes I ask myself, was he really born in the 40s? Or he had to backdate his age? What is it about him? What is it about Trump? A lot of things. Resilience in the face of all aridity and disenchantment. Going forward, trying to see that life gets to happen the way life gets to happen. He has lived a full circle. He has lived a life. Not a completely saintly life, not a completely peaceful life, but he has lived a life. And to that particular one, you have to give it to him. Trump has really lived life. He has lived life, a very, very large life. He has seen different things. He has been in different places. And he has experienced life from different perspectives. And now I just sit down to ask myself, to all those who give these conspiracy theories as it concerns him being a fascist, him being a dictator, him being a tyrant, him being an abuser, him being this, him being that, can we just, at least now the elections are over, can we just breathe and in and out and then hope that things get better and things come to work out for the good of the world? Because isn't that what we've been hoping for? You were expecting people to vote for your candidate. The same way also other persons were expecting other people to vote for their own candidate. Elections ordinarily will come to have a winner. And always the debates will always continue. It was rigged, it wasn't rigged, it was propaganda. Same thing was seen in Georgia, but out of Georgia, you cannot deny the fact that there's been a domineering force down there and it's not looking good for the people of Georgia. It's not looking good for Georgians down there. It's not looking good for TBDC. It's not looking good for the Caucasus. It's not even looking good for Armenia and Azerbaijan. And how long is it going to take them again to become members of EU? I don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. With the ties Moscow is trying to tie down there, I don't know if it's something that is going to be plausible. I don't know if it's something that is effective. I don't know if it's something that can be done. I don't know if it's something that should be done. But for whatsoever reason, I am saying the world can be great again. The world needs peace. And let us just hope, with the levels of uncertainties someone like Trump comes to embody, let us just hope that things can get better. Let us hope that things can ordinarily get better. I want to see the world work. I want to see good men strive and be resilient. I want to see life work out well and work out well. I want to see things happen strongly so. These are many more are my hopes and aspirations as a young man in the world going forward. These are my many aspirations and my dreams for the world. A peaceful world, nothing but a peaceful world. Nothing but a peaceful world. Not politics, not the shenanigans we get to see in parliaments and in different boards and meetings. Just peace. Just peace, my people. Just peace. That's all I hope for. I am Biringkpa bin Emeka, the mendicant. I'm your brother. See you next time.